Welcome to Women, Men, and Relationships. I'm JJ Flazanes, your host. Thank you for downloading today's show. We are about, 2 days away from November 1st. This is your absolute last call for the November Manifestation Challenge, the last one of 2018, which will be great. It'll be perfectly aligned with Thanksgiving and here in the States being appreciative and grateful and thankful for certain things. So we're going to start it off early and hopefully have a really awesome Thanksgiving in the process for those of you, again, that live here in the States. So I'm going to do a reverse week again. I'm going to do the solo show today because I just got back from a week vacation and there were too many lessons, too many things that have happened that I think are important for me to share and for you to understand, hear, experience, consider, and possibly experience yourself. And I'm going to do the interview show on Thursday instead. So today's show I decided to call To Be or Not to Be. I'm sure a lot of you have heard someone at one point, whether it be me or someone I've interviewed or somewhere in your life, talk about the difference between doing versus being. But what's really interesting is that when most people are talking about it, they're still just talking about it and they're not actually doing it. You're just talking about it. And that's great. There's an awareness to that. When you have an awareness about something, it's easier to identify it. It's easier to see it in other people. But we're still not doing anything about it or living it. And I hope that that distinction resonates or makes sense to you. So one of the stipulations I had about this vacation was that I saw the trajectory of this year way back when, and having Doug move into the house and having the separation and having things change and all of that. I recognized all the travel that we had and this client back east and his DJing back east. And then I had other travel. We had New Media Summit. I saw my life go crazy and all of this doing. And then my event in September and then my event in January. And it just looked like it was never going to slow down. And there's one thing I've learned from being a business owner, it's my balance of energy over the years. And I think because I create my own schedule, I decide when I work and when I don't work, and I say yes or I say no. What I have learned through physical ailments, like I got adrenal fatigue all the time in the beginning of working for myself because I was living in scarcity. I was also in fight or flight mode of survival, of paying the bills, of getting a client. And even though some of you who have a job, you have consistent, regular income, some of you live in scarcity and in fight or flight mode all the time, which is interesting to me because you have a job. So anyway, that's a whole nother topic, but because I used to battle with people who have a job, you know exactly how much money you have coming in every month. So then that would be a situation that budgeting is really useful and important. Not that budgeting is not important for entrepreneurs, but I would make the excuse all the time that I didn't know how much money was coming in every month, which is true, which is still true. I mean, I have a different relationship with it now. The range is different, but there were times where I had no idea. And so budgeting I did have 3 different budgets, but budgeting didn't seem as useful to me, quite honestly. I mean, other than a low budget of the minimal of expenses that I would have. So when it comes to looking at, here's a situation where in business, I have pushed myself so far and so hard and so long that I crashed and I recognized that I needed a break. And back in 2001, I started doing these teaching vacations and my first trip was to Jamaica. And it was great because back in 2001, there was no Wi-Fi. And I drove a lot when I was working because I had other trainers working for me. We span all up and down Southern California and even east into the valley. And so there was days and weeks where I would be driving an hour north for one client and then drive 2 hours south from that furthest point. So it was an hour in each direction, but going from the furthest point north to the furthest point south, it was 2 hours for one client and then back again. And that's a lot of driving, which is why I had a really great car. But when I would go to Jamaica, I would not have Wi-Fi. That was back when there was dial-up, and you would literally sit at the computer for 15 minutes just waiting to connect, and then good luck trying to send an email to anybody. It would just take forever, or trying to browse the internet. So it was not an option really to be doing work on the computer when I was there. And it was also not an option for me at the time to be driving anywhere. So I would literally sit my butt down on the resort. I mean, I would teach 2 or maybe 3 classes a day. I would, at night, dance in the dance hall, have a great time. Food was included. The drinks were included. I was even scuba diving back then, and it was awesome. And I would leave there feeling rejuvenated, feeling replenished, feeling earthed, because I didn't realize at the time I was earthing. I was definitely in the sand, in the water, not with any electromagnetic frequencies that I could think about. And it was awesome. And it would recharge me. And then I would come back and repeat the same behavior. I would work until I crashed. And then I would take another one of these vacations. And in fact, that first year, I did 3 in 1 year. And which was awesome and amazing. And I made lifetime friendships from that, from people who worked at the resort. And that became my go-to, like, real vacation, where I didn't make my own food, I didn't make my own bed, I didn't have to drive anywhere, and I didn't have to respond to any real schedule except teaching some classes, which guaranteed I'd have to exercise. So not a bad thing, right? So fast forward now, I haven't had one in a while. In fact, I think the last teaching vacation I did was in 2015, and I took my mother to Jamaica, and that was her first real vacation, where she didn't wash a dish or prepare a meal or do a load of laundry. And her swollen hands from working at the church and always baking and cooking and cleaning, and her knuckles are huge, and also because she's lacking hormones, which she won't replace. But we take her out of that environment, and I put her in a situation where she doesn't have to be responsible for anything for a week. And that was like the biggest treat of her life. She'd never experienced what I consider a real vacation. So I'm looking at this year, and Doug and I have a great schedule. I've been extremely proactive in getting on the calendar that every Monday and Wednesday we go to the beach in the morning and we exercise and we meditate, and then we come back and we have breakfast, and we don't start our day till about 10 a.m. on Mondays or Wednesdays. And on Tuesdays and Thursdays we go to the gym and we schedule that in, and then on Friday nights when he's here we have date night, and then once a month we go on a weekend vacation. Well, it was time to unplug completely, and we booked this trip to Cabo, which we just got back from. But I said to him the deal was that you have to unplug, because he sometimes would grab his phone the first thing in the morning and check his emails, because he has this thing about checking his emails and getting it down to the least amount of emails in the box, which I'm really glad when he looks at my email box, he doesn't hyperventilate. So I wanted an electromagnetic frequency relief and release, and he agreed to that, and there was no problem. And I was a little bit agitated the first day only because I had to be online because he wasn't with me yet. And I was just tracking his whereabouts and making sure he got, to Cabo well and all that good stuff. But then when he got there, I'm like, okay, phones are off, iPads are off, everything is off. And we were completely unplugged for a week. Now, this was not hard for me. And I don't think it was hard for him, but I think it's the first time in 20 years where he actually has unplugged and trusted the process of his business and everybody else filling in for him, so to speak. Now, I'm recording this on Monday. I have yet to check my email because I knew that if I went into my email, there'd be a huge abyss of never-ending emails, and that this recording would go later and later and later in the day, and my stress level would go up and up and up because I knew I'd need to record it, and then it'd feel like a chore, and then it would feel like work, and then it would be less impactful because I'm inspired right now. I'm still on the high of disconnection. I'm still on the being in your body. So today's show is called To Be or Not to Be. When we were there, we did work a little bit. We actually, for Women, Men, and Relationships, we're doing this CD series called Enlightened Sex by David Deida, and we're going through the CDs, and we're listening, and we're learning, and we're sharing. And so I wanted to do that, and then we did record 2 episodes while we were away. Because it's fun, because we like to talk. We took it to the beach. It was super fun. And we even recorded a show on his, for Nice Guys. So as I'm sitting here thinking about the lessons, and this would be a great one to do together, actually, to ask him his opinions about his lessons, things that I wanted to talk about on Nice Guys, which you wouldn't let me because it was a Tuesday, Thursday episode, which are more of the kind of casual, fun days. I wanted to just make sure people understand that your concept of understanding being versus doing doesn't mean you do it. How often do you actually create space for yourself to do nothing and to be present? Just be. No distractions, no numbing, no eating or drinking or anything to get in the way of you just literally sitting in your body and being. Now, I'm not saying you sit and you be like you're meditating for like 5 hours, but what about just listening to your own heartbeat and your own breath for a minute? How about relaxing into that there's nothing you have to get to? Can you just be in the moment? That's one of the things I loved about acting. And one of the things that I actually miss about performing is that when you're on stage and when you're on, doing something in a performance way, whether it be acting, singing, or dancing, and there's an audience, you're present. Everyone's looking at you. You have to be in the moment. And it's very meditative, actually, because you can't be thinking about, and you may be thinking about what move do I have to do next, but generally when you're in it, especially acting, you're in it. Like you're right there. There is no, what happened yesterday? What am I going to eat later? There's no, oh my God, I forgot to take the trash out. You actually have to be present. And there's a stillness in being present. And for a lot of people, it's freaking hard to do. A lot of you, not you people who listen to me, but there's a lot of people out there who numb at every turn. There's noise and doing and zoning out at every turn. And now I understand in the masculine energy, zoning out and finding death and nothingness is sometimes preferable. That's what the masculine needs. That's what the masculine is seeking, which is why sex and having an orgasm is like the nothingness, or jumping out of a plane gets you into that fearness of nothingness. So that's one of the things that we were talking about with the Enlightened Sex. So if you want to hear more about that, come on over to Women, Men, and Relationships. But it doesn't mean there's still a way to get to nothingness without numbness. And nothingness can be meditative. It can be doing something mindfully versus something randomly. And I just want to encourage everybody, because I know it's not a practice that a lot of people are doing. And this is another reason why I have live events, is because I'm trying to not force in a negative way, but create space to force you into getting to know yourself on a much deeper level, getting to understand how you tick. There's several levels, and we talked about this on the Sacred Rest episode that I did with Dr. Sandra. And we only went over a couple of the different sacred rests that she has, but we didn't touch the physical. But I'm going to touch the physical because I really wanted to talk about it on the Nice Guys. Women, I don't care how driven, smart, successful you are. We do not have the testosterone needed to hunt the deer and go, 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 go. We do not have the physical makeup to go long stretches of time pushing, which is why for a woman, burnout can show up in so many different ways, and adrenal fatigue shows up in many different ways. And men, you have more testosterone, but that doesn't mean you have an endless supply of energy as well. There's an end point and a crashing point. So this morning, Doug and I took a walk. It was a little bit too cloudy to go to the beach and meditate, and it was a little too moist. So we just took a walk. It was a power walk, and I asked him if he was aware, because I was getting ready to record the show today, and if he knew his balance point. Like, what's your balance point? And he said, well, I don't think I've ever thought about it, and I probably don't have any idea. And then we talked about some of the practices that he used to do when he was at his busiest time in his DJ business, and how he would recover, which would be by going fishing or going camping. And so there was a natural ebb and flow to work until I crash and then recover. And it's easier to do when you do something physical. And it's harder to do when you're doing something more mental because you're keep thinking, but I sit all day. I'm not really moving. I'm driving. I'm sitting. Therefore, why do I really need to take time like that to do nothing? But it's how our body replenishes our physical needs. Now, you need to have the substrates available by eating the right foods to produce your hormones. But besides that, which is a huge piece, how many of us actually take the time? How many of you know your balance point? Do you know when you've gone too far? Do you know when you're getting to the edge? Do you know when it's time to say, I just need a break before you crash? Or do you have to crash first and go, oh, maybe I need a break? So there's the physical recovery time that's needed in being versus doing. And again, we are human beings, and I know you hear that all the time, and you probably are rolling your eyes like, yeah, I hear that. Okay, fine. Are you doing it? Are you taking time and space to be? Because it's not just about the physical side of it. I'm going to tell you it's about the emotional side of it. So I've been very painfully aware at every turn what story I'm telling myself, the feelings I'm feeling, what I'm focusing on when it comes to this transition I have in my relationship. And I'll tell you that I was at the spa on the last day in Cabo, and there was nobody else on the woman's side in the locker room. And we had just had a massage, and I had taken a nice, long, very relaxing shower. And I came out, and I thought I'm going to go into the wonderful-looking jacuzzi hot tub by myself, which I love. And I went in there, and I just was having memories. And some of it wasn't clear and attached to anything because I'd never been in that spa before. I'd never been with anybody in that room in that way. But a wave of emotion came over me and I started to cry. So I just cried. And it probably lasted about 5 minutes, maybe a little bit longer. But I let myself just cry because it came up. But it came up because I was still. I was still. I was quiet. There wasn't any music. There wasn't any distractions. And so just this energy wanted to be released. Now, I had cried other times. In fact, if you listen to Women, Men, and Relationships, I cry a couple times, even on the show. But because I was processing. And, there's been so much activity that we have to allow ourselves time to emotionally process. We also need to allow ourselves time to be in your body, which is where I was. I just had a massage. I was at a shower. I was now in the jacuzzi hot tub area in the women's locker room, and I'm having a thought. I'm now crying. I'm in my body. I'm really in my body. Finding balance is a lot of people who don't want to find balance, who don't want to slow down, say that balance is an illusion. And I'm going to call bullshit on that. But balance is not an illusion. Your body is going to balance and recalibrate whether you want it to or not. So whether that means you get cancer, you get sick, you have an injury, you have a divorce, something will stop you if you don't stop you. And when I say balance, I don't mean 50-50, like 50% working, 50% relaxing. I think for everyone it is going to be a different number and different criteria and a different set of needs. Going back to love languages, one of my needs is quality time. So if I'm not getting a lot of quality time, then I'm going to have a bigger need when it comes to doing and being. I need to be. I need quality time. So for me, a vacation is way more important. But for someone else, it might be touch. And so doing something like a spa more often and getting massages and seeing friends and family you love and having hugs and holding babies and holding your nieces and nephews, your children, that might be what is more important to you. I have cats, so I love up on them and I love holding them like children. So I have that too. So it definitely is individualized, but there's still a need for balance. So we got back yesterday and we had watched, where were we? We were in the hotel room and Eat, Pray, Love was on. So it was Saturday, last day, kind of recovery day, in between dinner or lunch and dinner or afternoon time and dinner. And so we were just relaxing and watched Eat, Pray, Love. Eat, Pray, Love is one of my top favorite movies. And I know a lot of you love Liz Gilbert, and I love Liz Gilbert as a person. But Liz, I just couldn't read Eat, Pray, Love. There's a whole middle section in there when you're in India that I didn't want to be in your head. So because I didn't want to be in her head, because her head is very busy. She was very, very, very busy. And I know a lot of you are, because that's why that appealed to you. Her book spoke to you because a lot of people, women and men, have a story and a lot of conversation going on in your mind all the freaking time. And it was overwhelming for me. So I didn't love it. And so I stopped when she was in India because it was driving me crazy, because it was her self-forgiveness time. But I absolutely adore and love the movie, because the movie to me was about the being, because we didn't get to see inside of Julia Roberts' head. She just was. I mean, you did sometimes when she was in India and trying to meditate. So for those of you that haven't seen Eat, Pray, Love, I definitely recommend it. But Doug hadn't seen the movie before. So we watched the last part when she was in Bali. And then we got home, we purchased the movie on TV. And last night we watched it. And I'll tell you, there's so many good lessons in that movie, which is why I love it. And there's so many good lessons in the book. And thank you, Liz Gilbert, for that beautiful piece of work and for your life story and sharing it with people. It was the first time, though, that I've watched it where my relationship is in transition. And I didn't realize it until halfway through the movie. And I went, oh my God, this is now me. And it's definitely Doug. And we're having a different experience with this movie. And I'm having a different experience with this movie. And one of the main themes of the movie, for those of you who've either seen the movie or watched or read the book, is about balance, right? She's trying to search for her balance in this whole process. And she's afraid when she finds her balance to give it up for love. And that's one of the things, not that she needed to give it up, but there's lots of profound words and sentences and epiphanies and ahas throughout the movie that I'm going to assume get lost in the book because the book is full of words. But in the movie, they're so perfect and they're so perfectly placed that just when you need to hear the culmination of the lesson is presented. And again, it's about that finding balance piece. And what does that mean for somebody? And what does it mean for you? There is a balance. We all have it. We all need it. I'm sorry, we don't all have it. We all need it. We all need to find it. But it's going to be different from person to person. Another principle that I thought to share with you about this vacation and about the doing versus being and the to be or not to be is about being flexible. When you're flexible in life, you flow. And that's a feminine thing, but how it's also masculine is that, let's take it back to the idea of hunting a deer for you guys, and you're focused. You're focused on being flexible, because if you're hunting a deer, you're following the deer. You're still following. You're not leading the deer. You're following the deer. You're trying to hunt your food, but you have to be flexible if you're going to get it, to follow the deer where it goes. So even though flow feels like a feminine term, how I think it applies to the masculine is in your focus and allowing your end result or goal to influence you, but to not trap you into something that feels restrictive or feels limited. And because if the masculine wants freedom and nothingness, then there's nothing worse than feeling restricted and like you're on the wrong track. And I could dive into that a little bit deeper, but we'll save that for another time. And this idea of, we're never going to get it done, guys. I know a lot of you listen to this show or listen to my shows, and we've got a whole different set of beliefs, and that's totally cool from where I sit, both from a physics level of law of attraction, of frequency and vibration, but also the physics of matter and energy. We don't die. We don't die. Whether you believe in reincarnation or not, which I think is absolutely necessary, because if matter is neither created nor destroyed, of course we have to recycle. So if we keep recycling into different levels of soul, we keep incarnating in different experiences and different lessons, then what is the point of life? It isn't to get somewhere or get something. You're never going to get it all done. And you're never going to get it all right. So then what becomes the point of life? Wasn't the point of life enjoyment and learning and growing and expanding? And if that's the point of life, then we can ease up a little bit on our expectation and pressures of every day. If you took a step back at your life and thought, what happens? Like, if you really played out, okay, why am I so stressed out? What am I trying to do or be or have? And if I get that, then what happens next? And then what happens next? And then what happens next? And then how will I feel? And if you look at that, you may think some of it's actually kind of silly. I'm trying so hard to get to this place so I feel better. But what we know about law of attraction is that you have to feel better and be in alignment with that frequency before you can ever get it in the first place. Otherwise, you're chasing your tail around and around like a wonderful, beautiful, cute little cat or hamster or something that is just going around and around and around. Which is why we have breakdowns, which is why we're not paying attention, which is why we're not present in our lives and we go, what the hell? How did I get here? And sometimes, how the hell did you get here? Well, it was to wake you up. And there was nothing wrong. There was nothing you did that you did it by mistake. It was all perfectly timed to get you here. Now you're here. Now what? Do you still repeat the same behaviors and patterns? Or do you make a shift? And what needs to change? I knew for me way back when I learned about love languages and quality time and that I needed depth and that I needed connection, I started doing meetups, and those meetups grew into my live events. And I told you over and over, I don't need to do this for the money part. Would I love to say that it's a cash positive experience? Absolutely. But that's not what's motivating me. What's motivating me is to have this conversation, to go on a vacation where I've unplugged, to have myself feel better. Not that I felt bad, but to really just be present in my body, in my emotions, where I am. Doesn't mean everything's figured out. Doesn't mean everything has been healed or released. Just means I'm freaking present. And I'm not numbing, and I'm not overeating, I'm not overdrinking, and I'm not oversleeping, and I'm not ignoring, and I'm in my body, and I'm experiencing life right now. And too often, it's the same thing over and over and over again. What I see most people on the track of, I have to go to work because I have to pay the bills. I got to pay the bills so that I can have a house, so that I can feed myself. And I get that. How can we take the being versus doing? How can we take to be or not to be and live it differently? And for a lot of people, it's vacation. For a lot of people, it's a workshop or retreat. For some of you, it's a daily practice. And for some of you, it's a weekend away occasionally. But you need to determine and decide for yourself what that is and what's important to you. So let's go over these lessons really quick because I did label them. The being versus doing. How much do you need? I have a lot of fire in me. Let's bring in some astrology here for a second. So I'm a Pisces. I'm a feeler, water sign, all about emotion. But I've got a Sag moon, a Sag sun, a Sag soul, an Aries Venus. Okay, that's a lot of fire. So there's a certain amount of doing that I like because fire signs are about action. But I also know that I will burn myself right out if I do not learn how to balance. If you're a water sign more than a fire sign, maybe you need to be more than you need to do. You need to ease up on the doing a little bit. So anyway, we can look at the astrology piece and add that into what do you think the right percentage or balance is for you. And then it's not just about working or not working. What do you do when you're not working? Because if you're someone who's going to do something, let's say like traveling, and you're going to go see this and see that, and your schedule is the same, we have not accomplished the task, people. If you are in one mode of masculine or do at work, and you come out of that to go travel the world and go do, you have not had emotional, physical, and spiritual balance of the opposite of what you do normally. You're just doing it in a different way, in a different country, with a different outfit on. But don't fool yourself. If you're going on a vacation and traveling or researching or searching and you haven't stopped the doing, you haven't actually become present yet. So we need rest physically, and we need to replenish our hormones and our adrenals for sure. We also need to process emotionally because sometimes all of our doing and our things distract us from how we're actually feeling. And you may have repressed emotion that needs to come out. And if you don't give it space to come out and yourself permission to let it out, then you're just holding it and repressing it and overeating, overdrinking, oversleeping, overspending, whatever. You're doing something because you're not allowing the discomfort to come to the surface and come out. Being in your body. being in your body, feeling every feeling from a stomach cramp to sleepy, to any kind of neck pains or creaks or things in your body, to feeling your emotions. When you have something come up, where does it show up in your body? Most people don't feel emotions physically until they're huge, and they're in the form of, knee pain or back pain or stomach cramps or indigestion, like big things. But what about the subtle indications that something's coming? Are you in your body enough to recognize those? Being present without numbing, talked about that. Finding balance, finding your balance and figuring out what that means for you. Being flexible. How flexible are you? I think the more flexible one is in life, the easier your life will become, because you recognize that there is no right way, there is no end point, there is no something you're going to get to over there, because as Abraham always says, the only reason you want anything you want is because you think you'll feel better when you have it. And you cannot get it until you feel it, first of all. And you don't even need the thing. You don't even need the thing you think you need to feel better. You get to have it now, the feeling. You can make it happen now. And that's why we do the Manifestation Challenge. So again, plug for the Manifestation Challenge. If you want to get involved, you got 2 days before we start. And then I'm not going to let anybody in past the end of the week, just because there's a momentum that happens. And so get in now, jjflizanes.com, go to free tools and resources and sign up. Okay, so that's that plug. Life lessons along the way. Right, so being flexible and learning life lessons along the way and creating space. So I'm going to give you one more opportunity. Again, this is why I've created events. I don't know what's happening after January, so I'll just say we're still on the 3-pay program. And if you want to give yourself some space, give yourself a gift you've never given yourself before. And don't look at it in terms of what am I just going to get out of it? What's going to be released? What's going to be allowed? What are you going to allow in and create space for that you want so badly? How can we get to the place to just honor who you are right now and really design the rest of your life, or design at least the next 6 months of your life or the next couple of years in alignment with what is truly calling to you? Versus continuing on the path of like over and over doing the same thing, and I'm miserable and I hate it. But if I numb over here and I just get through it, then by the time I get through it, I'll feel better. Well, why not make magic now? Let's make some magic. Join us for the Manifestation Challenge in 2 days, and I will see you inside the Facebook group. And I look forward to sharing more of some of these lessons. I would love to hear from you if any of this resonated. Let me know if maybe Doug and I can do one together. I'd love to hear his point of view about what he learned, some of his lessons along the way. Because, when you don't take an unplugged vacation for 20 years, definitely some stuff comes to the surface and you start to look at your life a little bit differently. So I hope you guys have had an amazing week. I'm glad to be back. I'm glad to be on point and in alignment, and I hope to share some time and space with you online and even in person. So jjflizanes.com is where you're going to find everything, and I will see you here later this week.